Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And I have my whole list made out for all the videos that I was going to make today, and I was going to read a meditation, because I haven't read a meditation over here in quite some time. And then I got a DM from somebody asking me to do a video about something specific over here today. And I love when you guys ask me to do videos about something specific. So if you have topics that you would like me to discuss, or if you want to do like an Ask Peter kind of thing, like based on my personal experience, not expert experience, but based on my personal experience, what would I do in this situation, or how would I handle a certain situation? Not that, like I said, I'm any expert, just based on my personal experience. Please leave it in the comment section below. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can either email me. My emails are listed below. Or you can DM me. The easiest way to DM me is Instagram. I usually see all of my DMs on Instagram. So I want to get into this today because I think this is a really, really good topic. And it's a topic that kind of over the period of a lot of years developed over time for me. And I learned different lessons about it. And that's the idea of forgiveness. So somebody asked me, they said, maybe you can do a Peterisms video on that, forgiving people who hurt someone or forgiving people who aren't sorry. And I think this is, a really interesting topic. How are we supposed to forgive people that hurt us, knowingly hurt us, and then on top of that, they're not sorry for their actions whatsoever. They're not even asking us for forgiveness, right? And so, we're told that we should forgive people. These are the things that I heard, right, back in the day, before I really started doing work on forgiveness, is that even when people don't ask for forgiveness, we should forgive them. It's the loving thing to do. It's the kind thing to do. And then, I would always hear that forgiveness is not really for them. It's for us. And I understood that statement, but it didn't resonate with me. Like, it didn't feel right, so if I forgive somebody, that's for me, not for them, but I still have anger, right? Like, I still have anger in my heart over what happened. So how is the forgiveness for me, not for them? And it was, a couple years ago that I heard the definition of forgiveness. It was actually by a doctor that was on the Oprah Winfrey show, and this was years and years and years ago. Actually, this note is from 2020, and the definition is that forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could be any different. It means accepting that it has happened to you, not accepting that it was okay. Accepting that it has happened, and now what do I do about it so that the past does not hold me hostage? And when I heard this definition of forgiveness, like, everything changed for me, right? In 12-step programs, one of the topics that comes up quite a bit is acceptance, the idea of acceptance. And it's interesting when I heard this definition, because for me, whenever acceptance comes up, in meetings, or I'm talking to friends about acceptance and things like that, my initial response is always, just like my internal response is always, I'm laughing at this because whenever I say this to people, they always kind of have a blank look on their face, but my initial response is like, what's the alternative to acceptance? Like, I've never really understood that, right? It's like when friends of mine have gone through a breakup and they'll say things like, I just can't accept this. Well, it's happening whether you want to accept it or not, or if somebody passes, it's like, well, I just can't accept this. Like, I just can't believe this is happening. I just can't accept it. Well, it happened. Whether we want it to or not, it happened. And, all of these things that have happened in my life, childhood trauma that I suffered, and, on and on and on throughout my life, breakups and horrific things that have happened in my life, when I look at that, it's my lack of wanting to accept those things as fact of things that have happened. And I think, often my unwillingness to forgive people that have hurt me in my past is me wanting to not let go of that situation. Me wanting to play it over and over and over again in my head. Like, well, if this had happened differently, or if they hadn't done this, or wishing that they hadn't done this. A lot of times, one of the reasons why I have a really hard time forgiving somebody is because I just can't believe that they did this to me in the first place, right? Like, it's usually on a personal level. I'm not talking about somebody that I don't really know, but like on a personal level in my personal life, when somebody has hurt me so deeply, it's usually because I'm just kind of mystified. Like, I can't believe, right, that this person did this thing to me. Like, I still can't, you know, it could be 20 years, 30 years later, and I'm still like, I can't believe that this, like, why do they think that this is okay, you know? I think, like, one of the toughest things for me is, you know, when I was bullied growing up and all through high school, and high school was, you know, it was, I think, when I was really aware that there were motives and intentions behind people doing it. Before that, it didn't really make a lot of sense to me. You know, and then years later, when I got to sit down with the guy that was leading the charge of bullying me the most, he asked me, based on, you know, something that I had put up on social media, he asked me if we could sit down and have coffee and talk, and we did. And, you know, I can remember at first, he kind of wanted to explain to me, well, first he asked me, you know, like, what my experience was like. But then he wanted to go in and he wanted to explain to me, like, where his point of view was at that period in his life and what he was going through. And I can remember thinking to myself, I don't really care, you know? Like, I don't really care what you were going through, because my life was a living hell as a result. Like, that, you know, am I just collateral damage then because of what you were going through at that time, right? And the thing is that he was incredibly sorry, you know, and he was asking for forgiveness. And I can remember sitting there, and it didn't, to be honest with you, nothing that he explained to me made it any better. It didn't take away what I had gone through. It didn't take away the pain. It didn't remove the damage that had been done. But it did explain to me why it had occurred to begin with. You know, that it was, he was hurting me because he was hurt by other people that were probably hurt by other people that were probably hurt by other people, you know? And I can remember watching the movie years later. It's been years ago now, but years out, you know, called Postcards from the Edge. And it's a fantastic movie if you've never seen it. And it's the true story of Carrie Fisher, but it's fictionalized, and her mother. And there's a scene in it when Meryl Streep, who plays the main character, she's talking to a director, and the director is Gene Hackman, and she's talking about her mother. And he says to her, he goes, you can blame your mother, and she can blame her mother, and she can blame her mother, but at some point you have to stop blaming people. And I can remember hearing that line, and I thought, oh my God, I'm like stuck in this cycle of blame, right? Like, I'm stuck in this cycle of refusing people forgiveness, even if they're not asking for it, but I'm not forgiving people, and I'm constantly blaming people. I'm constantly pointing fingers. You know, I'm not taking a look at what my part is in any of these situations. Not in some situations, I think this is the hardest thing about, like, making amends and looking at character defects and doing inventory and recovery, is that I've had to have, you know, my sponsor look across from me and say, you have no part in this. Like, what happened to you, you have no part in it. What your part in is that you're holding on to it today for whatever reason, right? That you're refusing to work through the pain. And therapeutically, with your therapist or an inventory, you're refusing to work through the pain. And that's a lot of what my part is in things, right? Is like holding on to the past, holding on to it. Not allowing myself to turn my wounds into wisdom. That's where now I fully understand that forgiveness is for me. It's not for the other person, you know? There's been a lot of people that I have looked at and I have, you know, forgiven them, and they have just not even really acknowledged it whatsoever. It's just like, they, like, blank stare, like I said, like they're looking at me like they don't really care. But the thing is that process for me of working through that has released me from holding on to the pain of the past. And that's what that definition is talking about, right? When the definition says that forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could be any different. And I think that that's what we do when we refuse forgiveness, right? Is that we're holding on to the hope. We keep on working it through our heads that things could be different, right? That this person is not upset about what they did. They don't even acknowledge that they hurt me in any kind of way, right? And I'm constantly playing it through my head different. Well, if they had done this differently, or if they had said this differently, or if this had been done differently, right? And so forgiveness is accepting that it couldn't have been any different. The way that it happened, you know? And then on top of that, it means that accepting it, that it has happened to you, not accepting that it was okay. And that's a really important part of this, right? Is that forgiving somebody doesn't mean that you forget what happened. It doesn't mean that you're looking at them and you say to them, and I think that this is the misunderstanding a lot of times about forgiveness. Forgiveness doesn't mean looking at that person and saying, I forgive you, we're all cool, it's good. What you did to me, no matter how horrifically it was, whatever pain you put me through, it doesn't matter. It's totally cool, it's totally fine, right? Like, it's okay. Like, that's not what forgiveness is for me. Forgiveness is allowing myself to detach from the emotional attachment that I have to the event that occurred by this person, right? Like for resentment, like a resentment to me has been defined as a resentment is a unresolved issue that I'm continuing to hold on to because I had expectations that something would turn out or somebody would act a certain way that they didn't turn out. That's what a resentment is to me, you know, an unfulfilled expectation. And so for my not being willing to move through the stages of forgiveness, which is a stage, I think, you know, of moving through pain, is me holding on to a grudge. It's really like, it's, you know, when you talk about, you know, drinking poison, expecting the other person to suffer kind of thing. It's, you know, it's, I'm the one that's suffering. So when people say that forgiveness is really for yourself, this is what it's talking about. It's talking about realizing that what happened, not continuing to play it over. Because I think often what we want from people when they apologize to us or they take responsibility, and I don't know if for you, but I've had people apologize to me before for things they've done, and that still doesn't take it away. I mean, it doesn't take away the pain. It doesn't take away the hurt. That still happened, right? So the idea of forgiveness is looking at that event that happened or the pain that we were put through, right? And saying that I'm no longer going to be defined by that pain. I'm allowing myself to be free. And it doesn't mean that what happened was okay. There was maybe nothing okay with what happened. And I can acknowledge that. And I can take a look at that separately. But I don't want to stay a victim forever. I don't want to stay in this victim mentality of everybody's doing something to me. You know, I'm not that person today in my life, you know, that everybody in the world's out to get me. And I think that often happens when we are unwilling to move through forgiveness, you know. So when the definition says that it means accepting that it has happened to you, not accepting that it was okay. It just means looking at it and being like, yeah, this happened to me. Okay, and I can't change it. This happened, this event occurred, and I cannot change it. There's nothing that I can do about it, right? And then going on and saying that accepting it has happened, and now what am I going to do about it, right? What am I going to do about it so that the past does not hold me hostage? And what that means is that I'm not constantly held or thinking about or preoccupied or obsessed with what happened in the past, you know? That every time I'm in a new relationship, I look at old relationships and I think to myself, well, I mean, if this person hadn't done this to me, then this, I mean, it's a constant playing out, right? You know, and this is where I constantly learn because, like, I just did this video the other day where I was talking to you guys about the quote in the Bratz documentary, and Demi Moore is in there, and Andrew McCarthy's talking about this article that was written about them, right? And her perspective is completely different than his. And she says in there, I love this, everything is happening for us and not to us, and you can't be selective about that. And I love that, right? And so what that means is, if you choose that, that doesn't necessarily mean that's divine providence, that's how the world works. But if you choose to look at the world that way, then those things that have caused us pain in the past can either be teaching lessons for us or they can be anchors holding us to the past. I want learning experiences in my life. I want teaching lessons. I don't want to continue to be held down, you know, to the pain of my past. I don't want to continue to be like, well, this person did this to me and they never apologized to me. I have a lot of people in my life that really hurt me greatly, have never looked at me in the eye, never taken any responsibility for it, whatever, you know? And maybe it's because they're unaware. That's the other thing. You know, when you start looking at all this pain and this forgiveness and then you start becoming pain obsessed and focusing on that, and it takes away a lot of the happiness in your life, you know, and then we start defining ourselves by measurement of pain. Well, this happened to me, right? And these are the things that define me. Instead of defining yourself by the measures of joy, which I've tried to do today, you know. I will also say this, And I didn't know, like, how much of this I was going to share today, but, you know, I've shared in my other videos that the mother of the man that died in the car accident that I was in, when I had, you know, she wanted to talk to me, and so we talked, and she forgave me, and in not so many words, right, but, like, she... You know, the things she said to me were of such a forgiving language. So, you know, you can't continue to torture yourself. And, you know, so many people throughout the last 2 years had said to me, this wasn't something that, you know, it happened to both of you. And she reiterated those things, and she said those things, you know. And it was like she was kind of loosening the chains of me holding myself to pain. Since that's happened to me, I've looked at other people in the past that have hurt me, in a completely different way, right? Like, if this woman out there that has no personal ties to me whatsoever is able to forgive me and grant me peace and grace, right? And she doesn't even know who I am. And, you know, in this horrifically tragic situation, then who am I, you know, to play God with who I give forgiveness to, you know? I mean, that's just, it's not that. And it's like, maybe that one piece of what I'm doing, number one, is holding me in other situations, is, you know, with a breakup or something that went, you know, bad. Maybe I'm so still angry at that person, you know? I can remember that the person that got me started on cocaine, for years, I would talk about him, right? And for years, I would talk about, like, I better never see him again, and blah, 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 whatever, and all this kind of stuff. You know, and it was like, I think it was like 10 years after that, and I didn't even know that, like, he was, you know, on social media or whatever, and somebody had posted a picture with him on Facebook, and I was like, it was so weird, it was like looking at a ghost from the past, and he had no power over me anymore. Like, I had done the work through it and whatever, and I can remember there was, like, just, like, this inch of me that was, like, it kind of got pissed off for a second, and then it kind of just, like, went away, right? And I was like, I don't even have those feelings anymore. I just don't, you know? And so I was holding on to something for so long. First of all, he was completely unaware, you know? I mean, I think if I had even said something to him about it, he would have said, I mean, knowing him, right? Like, at that time, he wasn't the nicest person in the world, but he was a pretty aware person. I think he would have said, like, that was never my intention to hurt you like that, like, and, you know, indirectly hurt you. Like, that was never my intention. There were a lot of things that happened. But I think that's probably what he would say, you know? I also remember in early sobriety being really, really upset with somebody. I've shared this story before. Somebody saw me out. I was drinking a Diet Coke. They thought I was drinking a drink. They told a bunch of people, and I was really upset. And called the guy on the phone, and then I called my sponsor, and I was very proud of myself. And what my sponsor said was, you're going to call him, and you're going to make amends. On top of that, you're going to get down on your knees, and you're going to pray for the resentment to be removed. And I was like, no, I'm not, you know? And he was like, yeah, you are. Like, you're going to pray every day for the resentment to be removed so that you can get to a point of forgiveness, because you would want the same things for you. And I think that's one of the most valuable lessons that I've had to learn through recovery, is that humanity is about, and loving other people is about wanting for other people what I would want for myself. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be granted that or they're going to have that, but I have to see other people the same way that I would see myself, right? You know, and so that's been a really, really valuable lesson. And I can remember when I was doing that, I would get down on my knees every night, I would pray. It was like him and like 2 other people, and I was just so pissed at these people, right? And every night, somebody commented on my video the other day, they put right with a question mark. I do say right a lot. But, you know, I got on my knees every night, and I prayed for these people. And I can remember being like, God, please remove my resentment against blah, 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 whatever. And it was like a month later or something, and I kind of even forgot to do it. And it was just, all of a sudden, I don't know how, I don't know what worked, but the resentment moved away, you know? So what I would suggest to anybody is the resentment comes before the forgiveness. If you're still holding on to the resentment, that's probably why you can't forgive somebody, you know? And it may take you years and years and years and years. As a spiritual person, for me, what works is to work on the resentment being removed, you know? It's like, I can remember years ago, like, when I was like, you know, deep and heavy, like I still work steps, but when I was heavy working steps, and I would be like so struggling to like do an inventory or something. And I can remember my sponsor saying things to me like, well, can you pray for the desire to work an inventory? And I'm like, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. Or that, you know, can you pray for the desire to see something in a different way? Or, you know, and that would maybe be like something that I would suggest to somebody out there that has spiritual beliefs, is that maybe pray on it, you know, pray for the forgiveness to be allowed to you, or pray for the resentment to be removed. There's a lot of work we have to do before we can do these things. Forgiveness is not an easy step at all, you know, especially for somebody that blatantly hurt us and is not sorry. And we are the ones that carry the scars of that through the rest of our lives. I know one thing is that today I want to be happy, joyous, and free. I want to be content in my life. I do not want to be held down to the things that hurt me, you know, 30 years ago. Whenever I talk about like bullying in videos, I always get like one person I will say, well, you still talk about it to this day. Well, I talk about it to this day to help other people. When I turn off the camera, I'm not sitting there like, oh my God, I was bullied when I was inside. I mean, that doesn't happen. Like, you know, like very rarely, like if I'm out to dinner or something and somebody brings up like they were bullied or whatever, they'll say something about their child being bullied or whatever, I'll offer suggestions, but it's not something I carry with me on a daily basis. I don't want to, you know, I want to work through these things, because the more that I work through, the more that I enjoy the world. And so for me to work through forgiveness in the way that this definition is that I don't want to be held hostage to the things of the past that hurt me. And that includes the people that hurt me. And so if forgiveness is my way of doing that, then I have to do that. But I'm not going to just grant forgiveness on people that I can't do it. Like it has to be authentic for me. For me, you know, to look at that person and be like, I forgive you for what you did, you know? And sometimes I don't even have to say it to them. Sometimes it can just be a feeling that I forgive that person. I don't ever have to look at them. I don't ever have to say it. It doesn't have to be a statement. It doesn't, I think often we think it has to be this huge action where we call them up and, can I meet with you and I forgive you? It doesn't have to be all that. It can just be a way of thinking. You know what? One day I wake up and I forgive that person. I'm done with it. I'm not giving it any more energy. I'm not giving it any more power. I'm not going to be a victim of the things that hurt me in my past or hurt me last week or hurt me a year ago. I just can't, because then I'm not enjoying my life today. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section below. I love you guys so much, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.